The story begins in a dungeon, where a man kneels in pain. A healer asked if he was okay and encouraged him to hold on a little longer, but the man collapsed, prompting another healer to help. A warrior reported another who had collapsed and inquired about the total number of people who had fallen. Alarmed by their dwindling mana, the warrior's friend asked if they would all die at this rate. The man reassured them, saying that they still had hope, because the Empire and hero Burn were with them. Burn, who heard their voices, said that they must be fine and encouraged them to try harder. Everyone agreed, but Burn felt the group's spirit wavering. When they first set out, their conquering group had 74 members. Now only 43 remained. Burn clenched his teeth in anger, reflecting that they didn't lose 31 people just because 43 survived. Despite giving their all, they could not protect their 31 fallen allies. Burn pondered the harsh reality, accepting that such a loss was to be expected in one of the 7 evil dungeons, the core of the Ancient. Suddenly, someone called out to Burn, pointing ahead. He saw a large door and realized that they had finally arrived. The door marked the end of the dungeon, the core of the Ancient, and the finish line of their perilous adventure, achieved at great sacrifice. Behind the door lies an unimaginable treasure, potentially the greatest work of mankind, 36 virtuous masterpieces. However, this place is also where the dungeon master lives. Suddenly, the ground shook uncontrollably, startling Burn. He quickly shouted orders, commanding everyone to get into formation. He directed the swordsmen and shield bearers forward and told the witches to create light to prioritize their vision. The cave gradually calmed down, and one of the witches realized the rumbling sound had stopped, deciding to shine more light. Burn told everyone to stay alert. As the witches turned on the lights, they saw something lying on the ground. The light woke it up, and it slowly stood up, causing Burn to sweat in fear and freeze in shock. The creature opened its mouth, revealing sharp teeth. Burn immediately ordered everyone to flee, realizing that the threat was immense. Later, a skeleton summarized the situation. Humans had entered in droves while he was asleep. Despite his exhaustion, he fought valiantly. The protagonist, whose name is Swallow, proudly acknowledges this, mentioning that he faces 2 enemies, humans and his own exhaustion. Swallow called the skeleton Patrick and asked him to calm down. However, Patrick was incredulous, questioning how he could remain calm in such a situation. He yelled, demanding to know how someone who was supposed to be the boss of the monsters could fall asleep until the humans were right in front of him. Patrick questioned the logic of yawning carelessly in front of their enemies, emphasizing that this was a matter of mindset, his mindset. He asked Renee for her opinion, and Renee admitted that she didn't know. However, she was once again fascinated by the protagonist, Lord Swallow, who overwhelmed the humans just by yawning. This response upset Patrick. Feeling defeated, he sat down and thought that he should give up. Patrick then exclaimed that the dungeon was doomed. Swallow tried to reassure him, joking that worrying too much would be bad for his bones. This dungeon, known as the core of the Ancient, is one of the 7 evil dungeons that are considered impossible for humans to storm. Most dungeons fall into the hands of human raiders because the relationship between humans attacking and monsters defending is fundamentally unequal. Humans can choose when to attack, while monsters must always be ready to defend. This constant warfare would only weaken the dungeon over time. In a time when countless dungeons were invaded and created, there were a few exceptions, dungeons that could not be conquered by humans. That seemed obvious in hindsight. These exceptions, the 7 evil dungeons, were considered impossible for humanity to conquer. Among all of them, the core of the Ancient stood out as the most evil. Many monsters guarded this dungeon, including its unique guards who protected 3 different paths. The left red lane is guarded by Blad, a homunculus. The middle blue path, guarded by the skeleton of Death Mag Patrick, and the right path, which is filled with dirt and lacks accurate information, are defended by an unknown number of tentacles and a creature that rules over an impenetrable fortress, an ancient monster called Swallow, as recorded in the first page of the Imperial mythos. Renee told Swallow that after she was ordered to spread the books among humans, the number of intruders must have increased. She explained to him that guarding the dungeons required certain knowledge. If they shrouded themselves in too much mystery, humans wouldn't even consider entering. By providing enough information, humans began to think that they understood dungeons. They rushed in like moths to a flame, not realizing that more than half of the information was wrong. However, he never expected them to come in such numbers. Observing the pile of dead adventurers, he asked if 74 of them entered together. Renee confirmed this, and added that most of their equipment was unusable by 116 black tentacles. The few items that could still be used were quite valuable, but she commented that she could handle them without damaging the items. She stared at him in silence for a moment and then agreed. Slowly she dissolved like a shadow and gathered in a circle. A human eye peered out, and a human hand grabbed Renee. She assured Renee that she knew she could handle it, making Renee laugh shyly. Patrick glared at them, asking if they were having a meeting or just playing around, and why they looked so excited. While trying to laugh, Patrick sarcastically comments that the atmosphere is so sweet that it could give him a cavity, and not just his teeth. He feels like his whole skull could rot. Patrick then points out that if he was going to do polymorphism, he should have done it right, noting that he has 6 fingers as he pats Renee. Looking at her hand, she realized that Patrick was right. Patrick continued, saying that this was an improvement from before when he had over 40 teeth, which gave her goosebumps when he smiled. Renee told Patrick that the sound of his teeth chattering was too loud, looking at him angrily. Patrick thought that he could not tolerate this anymore and considered quitting as a guardian. Moments later, Renee moved on to the main point, stating that humans are finally starting to go the right way. The problem, she explained, was that the 116 black tentacles defending that path were critically injured. Yawning, she assured him not to worry, as tentacle regeneration was very efficient. She suggested that they could monitor the situation and find another guard if necessary. Patrick, feeling frustrated, asked if he could look for 2 guards as he also wanted to quit. She replied, reminding Patrick that he was her slave for life. Then she noted that humans would now probably just take the right path. Patrick adds that the humans will probably form another group of conquerors as they speak. Renee told them that humans often use communication spells to send messages to each other, so the information about the true path had been exposed and could spread widely. She slammed her hand on the table and declared that they needed a proper counter-strategy, announcing a change to their task. He asked Renee if she had kept the red path and then told her that he wanted Renee to keep the infected path on the right. He explained that the conquered parties would swarm there, thinking it was an opening, and he wanted Renee to protect it. Eagerly, Renee agreed, confident that she could defend against any number of humans. She then instructed Patrick to take over the red line that Renee had been defending. Patrick, confused, asked why. She explains that when the humans realize that Renee is on the infected path, they will switch to the red path, so Patrick will be there to defend it. This way, they can effectively protect against attacks on both paths. Patrick interrupted, asking what their plan was if the humans took the middle blue lane. She was stunned by the question, and they shared a moment of silence to reflect. She asserted that they would have no choice but to face the humans head-on. Patrick questions the viability of the plan, but Renee enthusiastically states that the plan is perfect, causing Patrick to react with disbelief and nausea. Renee continued, stating that the most pressing issues have been resolved, leaving only the issue of the sword to be dealt with. She asked about the sword she mentioned, while Patrick explained that it was a weapon used by the leader of the conquering party. Patrick expressed disbelief that a human would use such a sword and given the strength of the humans they were facing. She asked again about the sword, and Patrick confirmed that he had also heard about the sword before. Patrick looked at the sword and picked it up, and realized that it was one of the 36 virtuous masterpieces, weapons famous among humans. Some of them were not really weapons, but he identified this one as the 14th, named Tannabella. He remembered that this was one of the 36 Master Chef collections, or something similar, and he speculated that there might be more tucked away somewhere. Patrick emphasized that it was a masterpiece, and added that the knife Renee was holding was also one of the 36 masterpieces. He commented that the humans brought an impressive weapon this time. Patrick asked what they should do with the weapon, suggesting that giving it to the monster near the entrance would risk it being reclaimed by the humans. He argued that he should keep it to prevent such a scenario. He questioned if he didn't use the sword himself and could use the sword. Patrick was surprised by the suggestion and asked if she really meant it, and she confirmed her decision. Patrick laughed nervously and admitted that he had no other choice as it was his order. She described the core of the Ancient as a place with formidable homunculus servants, death knights emitting an aura of death, and a lair of giant ancient monsters. She then told Patrick that, since she had entrusted him with the sword, he should tear up the letter of resignation hidden in his rebs. Renee remains focused on Swallow, who is likened to a sunflower, while Patrick is portrayed as the conscience of the dungeon, who is adept at challenging his superiors. Swallow, depicted as an ancient monster, is the embodiment of laziness incarnate. When Renee asked about what to do with the rest of the loot, Swallow suggested their usual approach: utilize what they could and use everything else as bait for future intruders. Renee agreed sweetly and assured him that she would handle the distribution carefully. Patrick said that he would also do his job meticulously this time, and Swallow nodded in agreement. He mentioned the monster's specific lack of need for magic items and suggested selling mana stones instead, hoping to make a profit. He considered it for a moment and surprised them by suggesting to visit the human village, while standing up abruptly. They reacted with surprise, prompting Patrick to question their reaction and suggest Renee to go. Renee strongly agrees with Patrick's suggestion. He asked why they were hesitating, and Patrick explained his previous clumsy attempt to transform into a human, where his tail was visible. Swallow glared at Patrick angrily but acquiesced, and ordered Renee to bring back lots of delicious food. Later, Renee exited the dungeon, commenting on the pleasant weather before informing Swallow of her departure. Arriving at the shop, Renee apologizes to the man because he refused to buy things from her. She demanded to know the reason, her anger evident. The man reached under his desk and handed her a B-rank mana stone, explaining that ordinary people take 10 years to save up to get one, but the stone he was carrying was bigger. Such stones could only be used by those at the level of Imperial Palace mages or high-level mages in the Magic Tower. Perhaps a jeweler in the capital, under an agreement with the Imperial family or the Magic Tower, could handle it. Realizing that the capital was too far away and he would have to visit the Magic Tower, he reluctantly picked up his bag. Despite her reluctance to visit the Magic Tower, she decided to do it for Swallow's sake. While heading for the door, she informed the man of her departure. The man said goodbye, but then realized that he left behind one crystal. Before leaving, he left a tip for the man and affectionately referred to him as human in gratitude for his information. The man found it strange, considering he himself was human. Upon reaching the Magic Tower wing, someone asked if he had come to sell mana stones and advised him to consult the guild master. She agreed, and the man offered to guide her to the office. As they walked, she observed the structure of the tower, noticing its resemblance to a dungeon, with the head of the tower being at the top. Greeted by a woman named Gromitz Amr, the leader of the Magic Tower wing, he thanked her for her visit. When Amr asked her identity, impressed by her mana, the woman introduced herself as Ren. Amr originally intended to ignore her because of her young age, but after learning that she was carrying a collection of mana stones, the guard showed familiarity with the reputation of the Magic Tower wing. If Renee was aware of her status, they believed that she had high-level mana stones that met their standards. While pouring the stones onto the table, Renee invited Amr to inspect them for himself. Amr was pleasantly surprised to find that the stones were A-rank mana stones of exceptional quality. As he picked up one stone, he realized that they were stones of the highest of quality, far beyond what a child should have. Out of curiosity, Amr questioned Renee about where she got the stones from. Observing Renee's silver hair, Amr remembered that one of the 8 great houses of the empire had a family with silver hair. He speculated whether Renee might be the daughter of that house who had escaped, secretly carrying the stones. Amr could not understand how a young girl like Renee could possess mana stones of such high quality. Despite his suspicions, Amr recognized Renee's royal status and the complexity of the world. He apologized for his rudeness at the beginning and admitted that he did not expect the stones to be of such high quality. The Magic Tower wing expressed their desire to purchase all the stones. The Amr then proposed a price of 50 ounces of gold for each stone, with a special offer of 80 ounces for a particularly exceptional stone. Renee recalled the man's earlier comment about how long it would take an ordinary person to save up to acquire the stones 10 years, earning about 10 ounces of gold per year, which equaled 100 ounces in total. He firmly replied to Amr that joking about the amount would be his undoing. Amr apologized again, realizing that Renee had more information than he thought. Amr revealed the fact that, even if they gathered all their resources, the Magic Tower wing would not be able to afford all the stones. He instructed the Amr to buy as many mana stones as they could, leaving the Amr speechless and sweating. After a moment of silence, the Amr calculated that it would cost 2,000 ounces of gold, the entire amount available. Renee then proposed adding valuable items to the bidding in exchange for getting all the mana stones. She emphasized the importance of making sure the items were easy to sell. Amr assured her not to worry, emphasizing the quality and marketability of the items they could offer. Asking her to follow, the Amr took Renee to a normally restricted area, the storage tower. Ajwa explained that they made an exception for Renee, granting access to showcase their treasures. Inside, Amr first showed a tiara adorned with a 4-carat diamond, while pointing out the small mana stones embedded in its center, which enhanced its usefulness to witches. Next, she showed a lively black pearl, explaining that it would emit a crying sound if the wearer came close to poison. The mention of alchemy surprised Renee as she examined the ring, giving it a suspicious look, which confused the Amr. Renee questions whether the ring is not to her taste, explaining her discomfort with alchemy as it lacks cleanliness, which many people find disgusting. Amr then offered a heart-shaped stone known as the Red Love Stone, claiming that it had the reputed ability to turn one's love into reality. Renee was shocked by this concept and found it hard to believe that such a gem existed. The Amr explained that by infusing mana into the gem in front of someone they liked, it was said to create a lasting bond of love between them. Intrigued, Renee asked if she could use it on anyone, and Amr solemnly swore in the name of the magic tower that she could. Amr then asked Renee if the jewel was to her taste. With a slight blush, Renee admitted that the gem was indeed the right gem. Amr chuckled while holding a heart-shaped stone, which confused Renee. He explained that although he couldn't speak for the other items, this one gem was very precious. It had the power to captivate the heart of even an emperor, making it priceless. Disappointed, Renee gritted her teeth in frustration. Unexpectedly, Renee offered something to the Amr, which surprised him. He questions how Renee still has it. Renee boldly proposed to trade all the mana stones she had brought earlier, along with a weapon, in exchange for the jewel. Amr was surprised by the proposal. Then, someone called Amr Guild Master, which made him panic. He was asked if he had indeed given the crystal away. Amr turned to Renee to ask for clarification. The person explained the importance of the object, expressing his concern that the young noble would be threatened without it. Renee casually replied, asking what the problem was. She asserted that she had personally exchanged for the item she wanted, emphasizing its value despite its high price. In one of the notorious 7 dungeons, Chait Castle, an extremely strong woman expresses her frustration at finally dying and starts cutting someone's hair. Renee entered the scene unexpectedly and apologized for not notifying earlier, acknowledging her indebtedness to the woman for her constant help. The woman warmly replied that neighbors should always support each other. The Ursabet Bathory boss of the malevolent dungeon castle Chait chimed in, expressing affection for Renee and praising her beauty. Bathory sweetly says that Renee will look beautiful no matter what she does, making Renee feel embarrassed. Renee assured the man who tried to protest her that there would be no problem, as the poor girl who was hit by the curse and the person she cared about would perish after the curse was lifted, leaving no evidence behind. Although Renee didn't know who these people were, she felt sorry for them. Bathory put the comb on the table, expressing her jealousy of the ageless homunculi. Renee shyly says that Bathory herself looks youthful with pale skin. Bathory chuckled, attributing her appearance to various beauty products and blood consumption. While standing up slowly, Renee asked Bathory what she thought of her current appearance. Bathory complimented her, stating that Renee was the most beautiful girl she had seen recently, and was confident that no one could resist her in such a condition. Renee laughed shyly at the compliment. Curiously, Bathory asked who Renee was dressing up for and speculated if it was to declare love. Renee seductively took out a heart-shaped stone, jokingly said confess, and firmly confirmed that she was indeed planning to declare her feelings. Bathory was shocked and surprised by the revelation. Renee quickly assured Bathory that she was just joking about the confession and asked him who he thought the person was. Renee calmly stated that she intended to confess her feelings to Lord Swallow. Bathory paused for a moment, visibly sweating, and accused Renee of making a nonsensical joke with a flat face, questioning whether it was because she was a homunculus. Renee insisted that it was no joke. She was serious about her feelings for Swallow. Alarmed, Bathory asked what Renee found attractive about Swallow, and struggled to think of an attractive quality in her. Renee passionately enumerated the reasons why she admired Swallow, starting with her strength. Bathory reluctantly admits that Swallow may be the strongest creature in the world, but her laziness negates most of that power. Undaunted, Renee admits Swallow's flaws: her laziness, her large body, her voracious appetite, her all-day sleeping habit, her snoring habit, her tactlessness, and her weight gain. Bathory exclaimed in disbelief, uttered "Oh my," and asked if Renee really liked Swallow despite all her flaws. Renee immediately replied with an emphatic yes, affirming her sincere affection for him. In the imperial capital of Liège, at the Dungeon Conquest Coalition, a tense atmosphere prevailed as news spread of the possible annihilation of hero Bernd Hischtalz's conquest party. A man made a speech at the meeting, stating their belief that Bernd's party had met its end. This sparked outrage from someone in the crowd, who angrily dismissed the claim as nonsense, as they were told that the party had easily defeated the dungeon guards. Another voice challenged the certainty, pointing out that without the discovery of the corpse, they could not be sure of anything, firmly stating that Bernd would never give up on ordinary monsters. However, an older man interjected with a grim perspective, chiming in that the core of the ancient dungeons were not vast, and such encounters often ended quickly, either with victory or death within a single day. With no word from Bernd for 2 days, the possibility of his death seemed increasingly certain. The discussion turned to Bernd's legendary weapon, one of the 36 honored masterpieces. The old man directed questions to the speaker, unearthing information about the fate of Bernd's sword, highlighting its significance and implications should it fall into enemy hands. The room fell silent, the gravity of the situation settling among those gathered, as they pondered the fate of Bernd's hero Hischtalz and the dangerous mystery that shrouded his legendary weapon. The man sullenly explained that once they reached the heart of the ancient dungeon, all communication magic was cut off, making it impossible to retrieve Bernd's 14th masterpiece of virtue, Tannabella, unless they returned to the area. The old man nodded in understanding, absorbing the grim reality of the situation. The other people in the room found it difficult to accept. One of them suggested rushing back to the dungeon to retrieve the missing artifacts, but the other was opposed, warning against sacrificing any more in the dungeon that had defeated the Bernd team. He argued that it was wiser to abandon the attempt now. However, dissenting voices emerged among them, refusing to give up. They speculated that if Bernd faced that dungeon boss monster, he would most likely inflict significant damage. After all, Bernd was their hero. Others proposed that the monsters might regroup and the dungeon itself would be reorganized afterwards. A consensus began to form among the group. One person proposed consolidating their strength to make a decisive attack. He argued that it was their duty to gather forces and confront the dungeon while the opportunity arose. The room buzzed with tense deliberation, emotions running high as they weighed the risks and potential rewards of returning to the core of the ancient dungeon. The fate of Bernd Hischtalz and the retrieval of Tannabella hung in the balance, amidst the determination to reclaim the honor and artifacts lost in the depths of the evil dungeon. The old man weighed the dire consequences of a failed attempt, not only losing heroes and masterpieces but also facing the wrath of the imperial family if they remained passive. He pondered the possibility that Bernd's team might not deal any meaningful damage to the ancient boss monster, rendering future attempts futile. The somber silence in the room reflected the weight of this realization. Suddenly, a newcomer entered, challenging the prevailing pessimism. He expressed his belief that conquering the dungeon was doable. Surprised, the old man questioned the presence of the Imperial Magic Research Association, to which the leader with the third eye responded sharply. He reminded the old man of whose authority they served, implying that they should not be questioned lightly. The atmosphere became tense as the implications sunk in. The old man understood the implications of defying such authority, especially in the face of potential failure. He reluctantly acknowledged the precariousness of the situation and the power dynamics at play. The room was full of murmurs as the debate over strategy and responsibility continued. Each voice carried the weight of their loyalty to the Empire and the urgency of their mission. Amidst the uncertainty and worry, the resolve to face the dungeon remained, despite being overwhelmed by the daunting risks and the shadow of recent defeat. The old man seethed inwardly as he realized that the Imperial family had already intervened. The leader of the Imperial Magic Research Association paced around the room, cursing their failure and the consequences of their actions. He lamented the loss of the hero and his precious masterpiece, giving the assembled group a sense of disbelief and fear. Silence fell as everyone absorbed the gravity of his words, sweating with trepidation. In an ominous tone, the leader pointed at someone and questioned, who would be responsible for coordinating the Empire's conquest team if he was going to eliminate them all. He revealed that the Emperor had proposed a way for them to survive, by launching another attack on the ancient dungeon core. The old man challenged the feasibility of this plan, pointing out Burn's failure and questioning how they could succeed where they could not. In response, the leader grinned sarcastically and introduced the concept of Nifrim, hinting at the importance of this concept and how it would be used in their next endeavor. Murmurs spread throughout the room as everyone speculated on what Nifrim could do and what role it would play in their desperate efforts. The old man shot back, recalling the troubled history of the hybrid Nifrim. The leader retorted firmly, asserting that Nifrim was not a failure, but rather a great success. He slammed his hand on the table, challenging their doubts and demanding why Bern Hichtolz and his team failed at the core of the Ancient. Was it their weakness or carelessness? Sharply, he dismissed the notion, claiming that there was an essential element the Nifrim possessed that Bern lacked, and ensured their next attempt would be successful. Meanwhile, deep within the core of the ancient dungeon, Swallow suddenly opened her mouth wide and sneezed loudly. Feeling an ominous premonition, she felt as if a great storm was approaching. Sneezing once more, Swallow returned to her original form, her body cracking the ground beneath her. Confused, she wondered if she had caught a cold. He fell to the ground, muttering that he didn't enjoy it, but humans could come at any time, and Patrick would scold him if he delayed the patrol any longer. Even though Patrick was just a skeleton, the thought of him sent chills down her spine. Laughing nervously, she composed herself, determined not to let it bother her again. Given that the humans had used the sewer path this time, he decided to head in that direction. A short while later, in the heart of the ancient dungeon, he met the 16-tentacle guardian, who was badly injured but slowly healing. He regretted this situation, yet he knew there was nothing he could do to help at the moment, so he continued his patrol. Arriving at the fifth chamber, the Anthropo administrator, he remembered that Anthropo could regenerate as long as its core body remained intact and had sufficient nutrients. He examined Anthropo's core and was relieved to see that it was still alive, knowing that it could regenerate without his intervention. Stepping away, he descended to the ground safely, contemplating the challenges in rooms 1 to 4 where so many people had met their end. She anticipated discussing this with Patrick, though she feared she would be scolded. Yawning, she decided to postpone further thoughts until later and chose to rest for a while. Despite only exploring the sewer lines in room 5, he felt confident in his results so far, trusting that Patrick would understand. After his patrol was over, he relaxed for a while. Suddenly, a projectile flew past his head and landed in front of him. Reacting quickly, he released his powers silently, labeling them as dirty humans. Yawning once more, she warned them that once they entered, they would not come out alive. But then, in a gentle tone, Renee called out to her, making her release her tense power. Renee quickly apologizes, explaining that she thought he was a sneaky human. She assured him that it was okay and admitted that she was just a little surprised. Stuttering and nervous, she asked if Renee was dressed up, and Renee happily agreed and eagerly asked about her appearance. She stammered that the woman looked dressed for a special occasion, noted that she had shed her usual servant's uniform, and wondered if the woman intended to submit her resignation to Patrick. Shyly smoothing her hair, Renee confirmed that indeed she was dressed up for a special reason. Her confusion grew, and she was sweating even more when Renee asked if Patrick could make time for her. Hesitantly, he thought that he would agree to anything but Renee's resignation. Later, they arrived somewhere inside the dungeon, where Renee welcomed him warmly. She led him to her secret place and motioned for him to sit down while she prepared tea, her mind still preoccupied with the hope that he would not resign. As she poured the tea, she mentioned how this place used to be her exclusive sanctuary, but was now a secret they shared together, and he nodded in agreement. Shyly glancing at him, she observes his nervousness as he sips the tea, silently begging him not to resign. Then he surprised her by mentioning that it had been 80 years since he received it, leaving her feeling confused. He asked if she remembered, and she assured him that she did. 80 years ago marked the peak of the spirit of dungeon conquest, with countless dungeons falling and humans swarming into the ancient core. It was during this time that Renee got her famous alias and started to become famous. Acknowledging everything she had experienced, she asked about her healed right eye, secretly relieved that resignation was not on her mind. He expressed his joy that she remembered his eye, which made her very happy. He assured her proudly that he always remembered everything about her. Confused, she asks why he was happy to protect her all this time, thinking that it sounds like something that might have been said before parting ways. Seriously, she addressed him as Mr. Swallow, making him shake his head vigorously, and begged him not to resign. Then, full of confusion, he confessed his feelings for her. He repeated that he liked her, explaining that he had been waiting for this moment for the past 80 years. He comes closer, tries to calm her down, and thanks her for sharing her feelings. However, he reminds her of their danger-filled lives, where they constantly face the threat of injury or death. He emphasized that none of them wanted their partner to live in solitude for the rest of their lives. She admitted that she knew how it would turn out, understanding that she was burdening the man, but shouldering her feelings alone was becoming too much. The fear that he would reject her confession and turn away was overwhelming. Slowly, she opened the heart-shaped stone, expressing her desire to be loved by him, no matter what. In a sudden move that surprised her, he kicked the table, emphasizing his determination to do whatever it took. Startled, she urged him to calm down. Despite her attempts to intervene, he handed the heart-shaped stone to her, insisting that it would fulfill her wish. Surprised to see the stone, he warned her that filling it with mana was dangerous. Before he could finish, the stone activated, causing him to revert to his original form. Shocked, he asked if she was trying to kill him. Anxiously, he let go of the stone, which fell and shattered into pieces on the ground. He watched in tears as something dark began to emerge from the heart-shaped stone fragments.